Hi, Maria, and welcome to Fresh Books. Maria Ross, we're talking to the author of The Empathy Edge today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today. This is going to be
Not at
fun.
all. It's our
My first
pleasure.
virtual book club.
There we are. You know, it's. I don't think we're totally unique, but we're certainly one of the few. And this is the third session we've had in an autumn, or should I say fall series, because it's been authors all on the other side of the pond for us. So we started off, we were pretty lucky. We spoke with Martin Neumeyer, kind of brand guru. I think he's happy for us to use that term, although he doesn't use it himself. And then we called in to Toronto and Jeremy Miller, who, like you, Maria, just launched a new book, brand new name. So you're in good company, I think.
I am. I'm very honored.
So tell me what you've been up to. We're connected in a couple of different ways, and it looks like you've been amazingly busy. So give us a snapshot into your world around promoting the book just now.
Yeah, so the book came out October 22nd, and I purposely aligned my client work as a brand strategist, helping fast growth companies with messaging and rebranding. I purposely ended that at the end of September so that I could focus on book launch activity for the next couple of months. But yeah, the book came out October 22nd. As you know, you have to start promoting a book before the book actually comes out. So we were doing a lot there, but mostly I've been busy doing media interviews and also doing events, which have been great. So getting the word out. I did some events in Seattle, Chicago, events in the Bay Area, and then I'll be heading to Vancouver before the Christmas holidays. And then I'm actually taking 2 months off for personal reasons. And then we'll be back at it doing some conferences and speaking engagements in February. So it's been really nice, and the topic has really been resonating with people, which warms my heart, of course. But I think it's something that everyone is starting to want and demand in their workplace, in the businesses that they support, in the brands that they love. This idea of, profit and purpose, profit and cash flow and compassion, as I always like to say. So it's just been really nice, because a couple of years ago, when I was first pitching the book to agents, they were like, yeah, we love it. Your writing's great, but can you change it to be about feminine traits being a competitive advantage? Because, a couple of years ago when the Me Too movement gathered steam, all the publishers were like, we need books about and for women. And so I purposely said no and turned down agents, because I want this discussion to be gender neutral. Empathy is a human trait, not a feminine trait, not a masculine trait. And as I often say, two of my worst bosses who were not empathetic were women. So we don't have a lock on this. And so, the more we can talk about this in terms of how it benefits the business, how it benefits your customers, how it benefits you as a leader to accomplish more, we can sort of get skeptics on side and say, this is something that customers are demanding, that employees are demanding, that we as humans should be demanding of our workplaces. So that's been really, really exciting. And then of course, events like this are super fun to get the word out.
Oh, that's cool. Thanks. And I think you're right. I think men have to try and do that without making it a gender thing, to actually kind of own a bit of the empathy. I'd say, those are good management skills, they're good leadership skills, they're good attributes for our brand. So yeah, I'm with you, but it doesn't have to be a gender thing either. So you give me a real opportunity to jump forward. You're talking about some of those local events there that you want to do, and if you don't mind, at the end I'm going to ask about what's next. But so I really wanted to say, come to Scotland. But so,
I want to. Want to come to the UK.
And then
everyone on this call can help make that happen. So we'll talk about that. Yes.
We've got a bit of a lobby here, so trust me, we're going to work on that. But let's go back a little bit and then bring it back to the book, the content of the book,
Mm-hmm.
and some people might want to join in there. So you said you parked Red Slice, so your consultancy, but tell us a little bit more about what else you do, because
Mm-hmm.
you're not actually an author, or you don't just sit and churn out books. That's not what you do.
I know. I wish I could. I wish I could just do speaking and writing. But what I run is a brand strategy consultancy. I help clients, whether I sort of have two audience groups. I have solopreneurs, consultants, coaches, people that are literally doing everything within their business and promoting themselves. And I also work with fast growth companies. So many of them in tech, but not all of them have always been in tech. And it's really just about companies that want to create an irresistible brand story and an effective message that drives sales, but that also sort of differentiates them from the competition, helps them stand out, helps them attract the right kind of customer, and also helps them grow the business from a revenue perspective. So my background is actually in a long background, but management consulting. From the marketing perspective, I've done almost everything there is to do in marketing. I've been a marketing executive. I've been on the client and agency sides. I've managed PR, I've done sales enablement, lead generation, website, you name it. And so I bring those skills to bear for my clients and run, as part of my process, I run a very effective cross-functional brand workshop to get everyone on side, to get the input and the perspectives, which, talking about empathy, getting other people's perspectives on how they see the brand and the mission and the value of what they offer to customers, and coalescing that into an articulated and compelling brand message that gets the attention of the people that they want to get. So I do it as a very efficient package. It's about a 6-week project because I was a marketing executive and I know that I hated 6-month, 12-month projects, but then they sort of need to take it and run with it. So, it will continue on after I leave, but I really just plug in the strategy component so that they don't waste time, effort, energy, headache, money on sort of being all over the place as they, create a new website or create new sales materials or do events or anything like that. We're really giving them the foundation so that from there, everything can be clear and consistent and compelling. So that's been pretty exciting. Like I said, most of my clients are in tech, but I have worked across industries, and my solopreneur clients run the gamut from, like I said, coaches, consultants, authors, e-commerce makers, all that kind of stuff. So it's been really fun. I've been doing it for, almost 12 years. It'll be in February. So I'm just sort of taking a hiatus from client work right now, and I'll be picking that up in February.
That's good. And no one can really challenge you, or if they do challenge you, I think it sounds like you're going to have the answers because you've been there, and you're now kind of taking your own medicine, if you like, aren't you? So I think that's a really nice combination of skills and experience to then say, well, look, let's take it out there and help others develop, which I think some of the listeners, a lot of us are consultants, coaches, advisors, and so on. And so we'll maybe twist things a little bit around for that audience later in the call. I guess when you're having these conversations, everyone wants to know why you wrote the book. Okay, and you've kind of done that. You've told us about that, but I'm a little bit fascinated by authors and writing. I read a lot of books, and everyone says everyone's got a book in them, right? So all of us kind of in here are thinking, right, and I can see 2 other authors on the call, so that's quite nice. So in practical terms, so you've got a busy life and you've got this business. How did you actually go about writing it? What sort of support did you have, and what was the process?
Yeah, so this is my 3rd book. My first book was Branding Basics for Small Business, and then I took a departure. I actually wrote a personal memoir about surviving a brain aneurysm called Rebooting My Brain. So I always like to say I talk about branding and brain injury. But this book, it's really funny that you say that, Finley, because I was kind of going through this, what do I want to do next period in 2016? And I knew I wanted to write another book. My son was about 2.5 at the time. I just didn't know what I wanted to write about. And as any of the authors on the call can attest to, like, you only should jump into a book if you're really passionate about the topic because it's a lot of work. So I couldn't, I had sort of these ideas, but then that was kind of wrapped up with, well, what do I want to do with my platform and my business? Like, where do I want to go from here? I've been effectively working with clients. Do I want to continue to do that? Do I want to step it up? Do I want to focus more on corporate, et cetera, et cetera? And then the 2016 election happened here in the US, something you guys may have heard about. And I was completely upended by it. I was completely upended by the behavior, by the incivility, and I was scared as a newish mom of what the behavior I saw in the culture meant for my son and the world that he was going to grow up in. And especially this whole ostracizing of the other, and that aspect really just struck me. And I was having the same conversations with my clients and my colleagues, whether they were solopreneurs, whether they were marketing leaders at corporations. People were sort of like, they were sort of shell-shocked. They didn't know what to do. They were like, well, I feel all this empathy. I feel all this emotion, and I don't know what to do with it. Like, I'm just a web designer. We just sell software. Like, what can we possibly do to improve the world right now? And at that same time, I was working with a strengths coach to kind of figure out what was my next step. And ironically, one of my top 5 strengths came back as empathy. And I wouldn't necessarily call myself an overly empathetic person, but I started thinking about it and thinking, yeah, that theme has come up in my life over and over and over again. In fact, when my husband and I talked about what we wanted for our son when he was a baby, we talked about, we want him to be independent, we want him to be creative, we want him to be empathetic. And so, long story short, everything kind of clicked. And I was like, I need to write a book about empathy, and about more, not about the theory, because I'm not an empathy specialist per se. I feel like I am now, but after 3 years, but this idea of putting it into action. So, because what hasn't been working for us in our world is just be nicer, right? Be empathetic, take someone else's point of view. What does that mean on a daily basis to us? What does that mean in the place where we spend the bulk of our time, which is at work? So I started down this exploration of, well, what does that look like in action? And it dovetailed nicely with my work, because a lot of my clients would talk about, we want our brand to be seen as empathetic. We want our brand to be seen as approachable. We want to be seen as the good guys, in the messy world of corporate life. And so it just all came together, and I decided to write this book, really looking at it from 3 levels: leadership, culture, and brand. Because in my brand practice, I talk about, you can't just paint a coat of brand paint over your business and hope it sticks. It has to be real. It has to start from the inside out. And I know Josh Levine's on the call, who I interviewed for the book, and he can attest to this with his work, that whatever promises you make externally have to start internally. You have to actually be walking your talk. And so he and I work on the 2 sides of the coin. I work on the external brand stuff. He works on the internal brand stuff and culture. And really, when that comes together, you have some of the most sustainable, powerful brands, whether you're a large global organization or whether you're really a successful solopreneur. And that's what I love about the message of the book, is it kind of applies to anybody. Little long-winded, but yeah, that's I was trying to save the world, is basically what I was trying to do.
That's brilliant, Maria. Thanks, because I was want to go on to that mission. So I think you're quite open about it in the book, aren't you? You're like, it's kind of by slight a wee bit to say, well, hey, you're maybe reading this book because you're trying to make your business a little bit better. That's fine. You can read the book, and hopefully some of this other, your bigger mission, or maybe
yes.
We talk more about purpose. So maybe it's that, it's more than just your profit, because I love that, how you say that they can coexist together. So that was a really nice backstory, and I think you're right that the environment, and obviously there's a global environment that we're all part of, but we've got a similar we've got a similar sort of environment, and I think we're all sensitive to that. So so you name checked Josh. We'll maybe pick up on an area when we go into his area of expertise.
Yeah.
But it was lovely that he's coming in to listen to
Yeah.
you, because spoiler alert, we're going to talk to Josh in February. Okay, so
Yay.
you have it
He's
here. Yeah,
got good stuff to share, so tune into that one.
cool. So what I really like as well, is in that you're saying that this brings value. So that the actual the subtitle is about how empathy can bring value. And one of the areas, when why is this good for business, that I really tuned into, and it was like a light bulb moment for me, was around innovation. And you quote Steve Jobs, and we all quote Steve Jobs and use Apple as a reference point, don't we? But I was explaining that I have run a workshop for years, a marketing workshop, so more kind of general, and I talk about customer focus, and understanding the needs and wants of consumers. And so we use Apple to say, how great they are, and we often get a debate going, because it's like, well, it's not really, because I didn't know that I wanted that. But what you're saying is, if we can get so close in an understanding of our customers through empathy, then we can become more innovative. So I really like that. I mean, there was other examples you used in the book as well, but obviously you like Apple as an example.
I do. Actually, can you give me like 20 seconds? The sun just came above the fence outside my office. So give me 20 seconds to close this curtain so you're not all being blinded.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's better. Okay.
So yeah, I was just asking you about the empathy aligned to innovation, and how Apple were so good at it that it almost seemed like magic, didn't it? But actually, the light bulb moment, it was like, yeah, that is the attribute that they were actually using.
Exactly. And there's so many more examples than Apple. I mean, Google actually did studies, as Google does. Google dug into the data with, I believe it was Project Aristotle, of looking at their most inventive and productive projects over the years. And to their surprise, they found that the teams that contributed to those most innovative projects actually led with the soft skills, not pure technical prowess or education. So people that were high in collaboration, communication, and empathy. So, even they proved themselves wrong about, it's not just computer science experts and technologists that can make innovative products. It's how the team works together, and the personalities and traits of those teams coming together that force innovation. And then, with the Apple example, the big takeaway there is it's kind of funny, because in all the speaking engagements I've had so far, people try to say, like, well, they try to use Apple as the antithesis for this theory of, well, look at how Steve Jobs was as a leader, right? He was known to be very mercurial and not very empathetic with his team. But surprisingly, having talked to, as you saw in the book, one of the first product evangelists at Apple, Ellen Petrie-Lians, she shared with me that despite that, he was hugely empathetic with the customers. I mean, that was actually, it was almost maniacal. And so he would read every email, he would listen to every piece of feedback. And he said he wanted to get to know his customers so well that he could give them something before they knew they needed it. And that's what we mean by empathy for your customers, is knowing them intimately, not so you can con them into something, but what are their challenges? What are their hopes? What are their values? What keeps them up at night? And these are the exact questions I ask my clients in the projects we do, because we build ideal customer profiles, which people fight against at first, is, but there's so many different types of people that buy our products. Yes, but there's a certain type of person. And what are they looking for? What are their needs? What are their wants? What are their pain points? And when you know that, you can not only tap into speaking their language with here's how this solves that problem that you have. And we can talk about that in a second about asking and echoing back. But also you end up creating new products and services because you get more ideas of, oh, here are these other problems they're facing related to what we do. What if we could build solutions for that? And you allow people to be creative and innovative. On the same token, and Josh can speak to this too, when you have a culture that's empathetic, where your employees feel seen, heard, and understood, they are freed up mentally and psychologically to feel safe, to feel like you have their back. And that frees them up to invent, to create, to collaborate, rather than spending all their mental energy on looking over their shoulder all the time and worrying about their job and worrying about how to navigate the political landscape, et cetera, et cetera. You actually free them up to do the work you hired them to do. And that's the joy of, kind of looking at it from an empathetic brand and the empathetic culture perspective, is when those go hand in hand, that culture can build employees and build workers that then can give a better experience to your customers. And that results in sales, that results in revenue, that results in customer loyalty, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so many facets to that innovation piece that I love to talk about and parse out.
So while there's certain elements of empathy, what we're trying to find is a 360. So not just the Steve Jobs customer focused, if you like. He has to be. He could have been better maybe within his own culture. So he's maybe got some of those attributes that you were talking about there. So maybe that's a nice way to bring Josh in. I see, as expected, he's muted there. Are you with us, Josh? He's maybe he'll be like you. He'll be on morning tea just now. But I'll see if we can get him. And maybe just sort of echo or exaggerate some of the culture elements. But I'll maybe see him when he reappears.
Yeah.
But
and he'll be on next month, so he's good.
I'll be that really awkward teacher or trainer and point the finger at someone else, but I'll give him a bit of notice. Sandy McCurdy is the sales coach. Big experience in big brands with McCain's and Kleenex. And I think a lot of people see sales as a real red-blooded, fairly macho, let's say it, some of those real masculine traits. But you categorically say, look, empathy can help increase sales, grow sales.
Right.
And I've been lucky enough to be coached and mentored to a degree by Sandy, and so you actually quantify that, which I thought was great, and I'm sure Sandy will have an anecdote for us.
And it's not just me saying that. It's Harvard Business Review has done studies of empathy being the #1 trait of successful salespeople, and it's all kind of common sense. It's just now we have the data behind it for the skeptics. So this idea of being a better listener, being attuned to the needs of the customer you're talking to, that's all empathy. And that's actually what enables you to make sales. It enables you to connect with someone and understand their world, understand how they see the world, and provide a solution that works within the construct of that world. And so when we talk about the traits and habits in the book about highly successful leaders, for example, which leaders, you could swap out individuals as well, even if you don't think of yourself as a leader. This is more like the things you can do as a person. Curiosity is one of the top traits of highly empathetic people. Highly empathic people is what they say. So again, it stands to reason if you, and also listening more and talking less and being humble. So those are all traits you can apply as a successful salesperson. And I've worked with big enterprise sales teams for years, and some of the greatest people and some of the most arrogant people I've ever met. And even if there was that trace of arrogance with some of those salespeople, the successful ones, when they were in the moment with the customer, they knew how to listen. Maybe they were a little bit more arrogant internally, but externally, they were very humble. They listened well. They could I always used to marvel when I would, because I'm obviously marketing, and people would say, you'd be such a great salesperson. And I'm like, I don't know, because I would get in those conversations with the sales reps, and we would be listening to the same conversation. And when we debrief after, the successful ones would be like, well, this is what I heard. This is what I heard. This is what I heard. And I was like, really? Because I didn't hear any of that. And they instantly knew what the roadblocks were, what the objections were, what that customer's fears were. And it was just such an amazing skill to witness firsthand that I really have a lot of respect for those successful salespeople. And like you said, I think the difference is they don't go at it thinking it has to be like, it's my arrogance that's going to win the sale. It's my overconfidence. It's my, I'm going to tell you what to do and prescribe, excuse me, what you need to be doing. It was those that knew what they wanted out of the conversation. Like, don't get me wrong. And Sandy can probably speak to this. They had an agenda, and they had what they wanted to accomplish, but they were very good listeners and very good at, reiterating what they heard and reading between the lines, understanding what that customer's life was like and how their product or solution could help make their work life better. And so I think that is such a great thing to remember, that it's not the arrogance, it's not the bull in a china shop thing that actually helps those salespeople be successful. It's their ability to be empathetic.
That's good. Good lessons there, Sandy. I'm sure.
Hi there.
Hi, Sandy.
Excuse me.
I'm sure you'll be learning a lot, because I know you're great at listening and absorbing. So what Maria's telling us there.
I've got a couple of questions. Thanks very much, Maria. I think it's really interesting. And it was interesting for you to say that empathy is seen as a feminine trait, which I totally understand.
Right.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I think one of the things that made me think as you were talking there is that one of the problems I think we have in sales is that people have to gain mastery. Mm-hmm. And as you've said, you've come across experienced salespeople that just intuitively pick up on what the customer's saying. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about marketing in a second, but I think Finlay likes my story. So if I can tell you one of my stories, I worked in frozen food sales, and I was calling on a wholesaler who I knew very well, and I presented a product to him and told them, I don't think it's for you, but I'll let you see it. So we sampled it, and I said, it's not for the market you're in the education market, you're in the fast food, you're in hotels. Mm-hmm. This isn't really for you. And he then started to argue the case that it was for him. But I didn't want him to fill up his cold store with products that wouldn't sell. Right. So at the end of the day, he was telling me why he was going to sell it, and I was telling him why I didn't think he could sell it. And he said to me at the end of the conversation, that was really strange. He said, I became the salesperson and you became the buyer. Mm-hmm. But I think that's an indication maybe of empathy. Is that idea that a salesperson goes in totally thinking about the customer and not their own needs at the early stages. The other thing, I very, very late in my career, I got involved in marketing. And I think one of the things that interests me is the way that we are now starting to use technology and processes in empathy. Mm-hmm. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that? You did allude to it earlier, Maria, but just how do you actually do it with maybe some of the larger companies?
Well, I mean, we have to always remember that at the end of the day, however big the company is, it's always a collection of people making decisions that, so this whole thing about we're too big to be empathetic, it's a machine, it's this, that, and the other thing. I don't buy that, quite honestly, because again, it's a collection of people making decisions. As I interviewed Jay Baer, who's a friend of mine in the book, he's a content marketing expert, customer experience expert. And he even said, I don't think a brand can be empathetic. I think you can have empathetic people performing empathetic acts that create an impression of empathy. And I thought that was really powerful. But the companies that do it right, number one, again, as I said, it kind of starts from the inside out. It starts from the culture. But if you have a marketing team, for example, that is really in lockstep with the customer, meaning, you know, we can talk about all the different habits and traits that they do, but they're getting in the trenches with the customer. They're accepting feedback as a gift. That's another one. They are speaking the customer's language. And to speak the customer's language, you have to get to know the customer and understand, again, not in a selling context. This is where marketing can come in, but understanding them, so that you can ask and echo back in your sales messages, in your marketing messages. You're saying things the way they phrase it to themselves. The problem, especially with my tech clients, is people fall in love with their own jargon, or they're doing it to appease analysts, especially in tech. Well, this is what the analysts are calling this space and this solution, but your customers are not calling it that. When they're up at night and they're cursing inside their own head, what are they saying that they need? Use that language on your website. Use that language in your marketing. And all of a sudden, somebody gets your email, somebody gets your sales pitch, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's like you're reading my mind, right? We've all had those moments, right? And so I think when marketing teams can be given the latitude to take the time to get to know the customer, rather than, you know, it's about leads, quarterly sales, leads. Being able to take that step back and say, you know, it's not focus groups per se. It's really just staying in lockstep with your customer. I did a panel the other day with a brand, I think that's just now getting into in the UK, Hint Water. Are you familiar with them? So they're a San Francisco based company. The woman who started it used to work in tech. And now she has a brand around fruit infused water. So it's still water. There's not chemicals in it, with just a hint of fruit in it, which is how it came about. And they are completely changing the beverage market. And one of the things, when I interviewed her a couple of years ago for an article for Entrepreneur, we talked about how she started the brand. And what she said made them so successful in branching out was they were constantly communicating with their customers via social media, via email, via whatever, and finding out how their customers were using the product and what they wanted out of the product. It was more than just they wanted water, right? It was a lot. Some of them were drinking it for health reasons. They were diabetic, and it was the only flavored beverage that they were allowed to have. Some of them were, so it was all these surprising things they didn't realize when they started the business that their customers revealed to them. And it was because they were in constant, you know, not just a yearly survey of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how great do you think we are? Which is usually what those customer surveys are. They were really in lockstep of, tell us how you're using the product. Tell us where you're finding the product on the shelves. You know, what are you using it for? What did you replace to use Hint Water, et cetera, et cetera. And so they've been able to expand into other product lines as a result of really understanding their customers and how their product fit into their customers' lives. So long-winded, but this idea of allowing marketing the latitude in the larger organizations to get them out of the day-to-day firefighting, the day-to-day lead gen, and give them the space and the latitude to do some of that investigative work and that communicative work with customers, so that in the end, all the efforts and money they're spending are actually going to be way more effective. And there's a few other examples in the book for you, but yeah, I mean, I think again, getting back to the core point is, when you have a collection of people making decisions, you can take the time to infuse empathy into your marketing and into your messaging.
Thanks, Maria, and thanks, Sandy, for bringing your stories to it. As you say, I always like hearing the story.
I love that story. That's a classic.
Yeah. Let's maybe talk about brand. You touched on it there, Maria, and you know, for those of us that work in that domain, it's always a challenge, isn't it, to actually, well, broaden it and deepen it when we talk about brand. And you do that really nicely. I think at the start of the chapter, you actually kind of split the brand into 3 levels. And so you go, yes, okay, the logo and visual identity is important, but it comes back to your point about actually being the delivery agents, the point of contact, the customer touch point, which is the employees. So they have to be, as individuals, representing the brand, and what we're saying is empathetic themselves. So how do you think this does translate into the brand domain, and what are your kind of key thinking there?
Yeah, so what you're referring to is I talk about brand being more than just a logo, as many of us probably do, but it exists at 3 levels: visually, verbally, and experientially. So visually is what everyone thinks of: the logo, the colors, how cool does the website look. Verbally is your language. What do you say? What is your brand voice? Is it edgy and provocative, or is it safe and conservative? And so what is your elevator pitch? What is your website copy? What is your sales pitch? And then you promise something visually and verbally, and where it has to meet is experientially. So if I have as a customer, you're promising me something visually and verbally, does my experience match that? Are you walking your talk? So you say in all your marketing and advertising, United Airlines, that you are dedicated to customer service. But my experience tells me otherwise, whether that's like direct experience or what I see in the press or hearing someone else tell me about their experience. So that's where companies fall down, is that they think of brand as just a marketing thing. And it can't just be a marketing thing. It has to be the core and essence of the entire business. And it has to inform product design. It has to inform pricing. It has to inform policies. It has to inform, your technology. All of those things, if you are making a promise, it has to be delivered via the experience. And so that's always the work that I do with clients and why I do a cross-functional team as part of the workshop, which many of them don't get at first. Why do I have to have HR in here? Why do I have to have the head of product in here? This is a marketing project. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. It's everybody. Because if you can't infuse the brand that you create, the message and the strategy into every single thing the customer experiences across the organization, then it's just a veneer. It's just a coat of brand paint. And again, you're just going to have disappointed customers in your wake. So where this fits into empathy as a very specific brand attribute is, once again, if you want to be known as an empathetic brand, which it's to your benefit, given all the data I show about where things are going, where consumer behavior is going, where the feelings of incoming talent, millennials and Gen Z, are going, you better want to be an empathetic brand. And so how do you do that? Well, again, you've got to have the right messaging. You've got to understand your customers. So that's where the two shall meet, in other words. And you could write a book like this for any brand attribute. Like what does it mean to be innovative? What does it mean to be caring? Whatever your brand attribute choice. I've just chosen to go through it in this doorway of presenting yourself as an empathetic, caring, compassionate brand, which, we define empathy in the book, but you can kind of companies are using those words interchangeably.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's part of the zeitgeist just now. It is generational, and that generation is becoming more important, and they're not fooled by the veneer.
Yeah.
They're pretty quick to scratch it off, and they want to know what's under there.
Right. And they'll call you out to millions of people while they do it. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump forward now. And that some of us are coaches and consultants, and it's lovely to talk to you because your philosophy and ethos is so aligned to the Frejz work that we do, and we're going out and try to get the same message out there. But taking the empathy edge to our clients in a snapshot, 3 takeaways. What should we be giving should be our offer be to our clients, who are maybe leaders or brand managers?
Well, I think that's a good question, actually. So I can tell you what I bring to the work, and then everyone can kind of see how this relates to their work. But as I mentioned at the beginning, my career started as a management consultant. I was a management consultant with Accenture in their change management division. As someone who'd studied marketing in college, all of a sudden I was doing organizational design and process design and skills gap analysis and all this training and all this kind of stuff. And so I bring that sort of never left me. And so I bring that to bear when I talk to my clients. And it's actually something I say, this is what differentiates me as a brand strategist, is I come at this with a change management point of view. And I'm about to publish an article on LinkedIn about why brand projects are actually transformation projects. They're not just marketing projects. Because what inevitably happens in the conversation, and this is what, folks on the call, you can educate your clients, is that this can't just be a marketing exercise. So questioning your clients on, okay, if we're going to make this claim in our marketing materials, whether you tout it or not, what are the proof points? Make them think about what are the proof points behind our product, service, or offering or experience that enable us to truthfully say this. And get them to start thinking about everything that they're claiming in the market as needing to have a proof point behind it. Like, what I do with my clients is pretend someone's calling you out on this brand claim that you're innovative. What are you going to say to them to say, here's why I can prove we can say we're innovative. We've developed new products every year. We invest in R&D, yada, 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 whatever those things. So even just getting them to think about that, pause and think about that and say, is this really true? I know that this claim sounds great and it's what your competitors are saying, but let's take a moment to get our ducks in a row and make sure we can prove it. And if any of those proof points impact another area of the organization, bring them in. So if it's some feature in the product, have a conversation with the head of product or head of technology and go, we're going to make this claim to the market. How do you see the product fulfilling that claim? Give us a couple bullet points as to why we can make that claim. It makes your marketing more truthful. It makes your marketing more robust. I always talk about the fact that marketing is not about lying. It's about elevating the truth of your story. So helping to educate our clients that that's how they need to start thinking about this, and not just, well, my CEO said I have to have this word on the marketing materials. Pushing back and saying, okay, but let's make sure we've got some proof points behind that. And let's bring in some other people within the organization that can help us flesh that out. And this is the beauty of making this not just a marketing exercise, but bringing everyone in. I think that is the biggest thing. The other thing is, it's okay to be aspirational in your brand. So some of the projects I work on when folks are rebranding, or on occasion, they're launching a brand new product line, or they're launching a brand new company, as is the case with many solopreneurs. So they don't have a brand yet, right? Like they're like, I don't know, I guess I can say I'm X, Y, and Z, as a brand attribute or as a benefit. So it's okay to be aspirational, but again, that change management component. So let's think about what you have to put into place to make that benefit statement true. So even if this is a brand new product, and I've had those discussions, especially with companies where we're like, okay, we can sort of make that claim, but here's a couple of to-do items for the product team or the the customer team, or some policies that need to change so that you can ensure that benefit claim is real. And that's where you get into change management. That actually fundamentally might change policies. It might change procedures. It might change different ways that people are working together. And that is change management. So I think those two things are really important, that we can elevate ourselves from a strategic perspective as marketers, as sales coaches, if we can get that point across. And we don't have to have the answer. That's the thing. We just need to be raising the question and getting our clients to think about it this way, because otherwise it is just a marketing veneer. And they will think, even if they can't do anything with that information, you are leaving them with more value, and you're getting them to understand that brand goes deeper than just what's on the advertisement.
Brilliant. Nice. I like those two, and we'll take that as a learning. One more thing before maybe ask about what's next for you as individuals then, because it's all got to start with the individual. How could we improve? How could I be more competitive with my empathy edge as a person? How can we improve?
I love that. So obviously there's several habits and traits in the book under the leadership section. So I'll call out a few of those. But one thing I want to say to that is the notion that I'm just not very good at empathy is kind of BS, because Science shows us that humans are hardwired for empathy. It's in our DNA. This is why it's gender neutral. It's just, I like to use the gym analogy, the working out. Some of us have been in an environment where we've worked out every day, and we've seen empathy modeled, and it's part of us. It's part of our standard operating procedure. And so it does come easier for us. We're more in shape, right? Other people have not been in an environment where their empathy muscle has been flexed very much. Either that could be from upbringing, that could be from their current work environment or culture. That muscle has atrophied. And so what you need to do is get back to the gym. So the traits that I share in the book, it's not meant to like do all 7 of these every day or you won't be empathetic. It's sort of like, you know, don't jump into the workout routine in full right away. Try a few things, start to flex that muscle. You know, it will be hard at first, and it will be painful, and you will be sore. But the more that you can do it, this is true of any change in habit you're trying to make. I spoke with a psychologist who works with highly autistic children, and she works with those children on developing empathy because many of them don't have it. And so how they start is just with rote checklists. Just do these things. It doesn't matter what your intention is. So here's the thing about bringing the skeptics along. It doesn't matter if they're trying to be empathetic to boost profits or increase revenue or increase market valuation. Just do these steps. And what happens is your prefrontal cortex is engaged because it's something that they're doing consciously. But eventually it rewires your brain so that it becomes part of your operating procedure. It works with those kids, and it can work with empathy too. So one of the biggest ones is practice presence. Because if you are more mindful and you are more present in the situation, you are not so caught up in your own stuff. So how do you build a mindfulness practice? You don't have to meditate for an hour a day. Take 10 minutes a day to ground yourself, to meditate, to knit, to take a walk, to sit in silence, whatever you need to do to sort of silence the noise in your head. And then you have more space to take on someone else's perspective and not be so caught up in your own stuff. The second thing is, as we talked about earlier, is being curious is one of the best ways to develop your empathy muscle. So when you're in that situation when you're with a difficult client, a difficult colleague, a difficult coworker, whatever, instead of this is why I'm right and you're wrong, and let me keep telling you what my opinion is, get curious, ask questions, keep digging. Why do you feel that way? Why do you think that's the best course of action? How do you see that leading to success? What is triggering that for you? Maybe understanding some of the personal context behind why people act the way they do or think the way they do. And from there, you can then find some common ground to build up from and say, okay, so now I hear what you're saying and I understand your point of view. It doesn't mean I just acquiesce. That's not empathy. But now I'm seeing things through your point of view because I've gotten curious and I've asked more questions. Corollary to that, listen more and be humble. So come into the situation. Yes, you're a consultant, you're a coach, you know best, you need to share your expertise. That's why the client's hiring you. But listen. So when you ask those questions, actually listen to the answer, not just use it as an opportunity to be like, this is what I want to say. This is what I want to say. Listen to the answer, take it in, take notes, and go in with a very humble, open, curious mind so that you can start to unearth what is motivating this person and what it is that they actually need. You can start to hear that the undertone, as many, like we talked about, successful salespeople hear underneath. And so I think if you really can start there with practicing presence, being curious, and listening and staying humble, just starting with those can change the dynamic of the relationship. And I know it's hard because I'm stubborn, I'm a redhead, I'm Italian, like it's hard. But what I try to tell myself going into every situation now is I want to ask more questions than I want to talk. I want to listen. I want to be able to let them talk and vent and give me an insight into what they're thinking and the context of their life. Then now we can have a productive conversation. So I think starting there, and again, if you practice this with work, you can't help but carry this over into your personal life, which is really where the whole idea of Trojan horsing a more empathetic world comes into play for me. Of let's use our work as a laboratory to practice this, as a sandbox. And it will naturally, I've seen it happen, it will naturally spill over into who we are when we leave the office and we shut the laptop down.
Yeah, no, that's nice. And then you start to achieve your bigger mission, your bigger objective. So note to myself, start to work out, but build work on my empathy muscle as well as the physical. So that's great. I said very briefly we would just ask what's next for you. You've told us you're gonna there's an article we're looking out for on LinkedIn in the short term. Then you're gonna have a bit of a break. You've got a bigger mission, but does that mean there's another book in behind this one, do you think, or is it too early?
I'm not even thinking about that right now. No. Okay. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of other media and articles that are going to come out, podcasts over the next couple months. And then I'm actually going to Vancouver the first week of December. We're having an event there, the Women in Tech Regatta. And then I'm already lining up some speaking engagements for February and just lined up one for May of 2020. So yeah, and my goal is maybe in the spring to try to get to the UK if we can, find a business or a sponsor an organization that wants to bring me in. We can work with them and have that be amazing, and then maybe do some other events around that. But yeah, really, I just want to, and I'm going to be starting to book client work starting in February again. So bringing this message, but also continuing to do the work to help companies convey who they are and the value they provide is going to be really important. So yeah.
Good. That's a challenge for us at Frejz collectively to go, right, okay, let's find a way in to get you to the UK and maybe Scotland.
Yeah, and the other thing I might do is I have a live coaching program for solopreneurs called Momentum that I ran for 2 years in a row, and I have a digital version of it on my site, but I kind of took a break from it because it was very labor intensive. It's a 6-month program, but I'm thinking about bringing that back for 2020. So that's pretty exciting. It's a small cohort. It's working on everything to master your marketing and your message and your brand and put it into action. So yeah, I'm thinking about bringing that back in 2020 as well.
That sounds great. And we can find all that at Red Slice?
red-slice.com. Yes.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Listen,
and connect with me on social, Instagram, Red Slice Maria, LinkedIn, I'm at Maria J. Ross. And if you connect with me on LinkedIn, please just write a note reminding me that you were on the call so I can accept the connection. And then I'm on Twitter at Red Slice as well.
That's great. Listen, Maria, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good luck with the rest of the promotional work.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you soon.
I know. Thank you.